Of course, this is U.S. History Part 1. We use the text from Bob Jones University, United States History. This is history from a Christian perspective, which means it tells the real story, the whole story. It's not that it's biased, it's that we're telling what really happened, which does not happen many times in other school settings. So let's take a look at our textbooks and see where we're going. So open to the table of contents. Table of contents. And you'll see that it's divided into units. Unit 1 is called Horizons. And we will cover the chapters that are given there. Winds and Waters talk about America before colonists came. Chapter 2, we look at the colonies, how they got started. And we'll spend a lot of time there because I think it's very important for us to understand who these people were that first came and settled and what they believed, because that is going to drive our country for centuries to come. We're still feeling the effects of what those people did. And so it's extremely important for us to understand that. So we'll spend some time there. Then you see that we get into colonial life. We'll look at that briefly. We'll look at religion in the American colonies because that was of tantamount importance. Because, once again, that was a predominant source of ideas for people living in the colonies. And we're going to see specifically how God worked in the colonies, how he brought about an awakening in the colonies, and how important that was. Then we go on to Unit 2, which is the beginning of our nation as a country, the rising storm, the things leading up to our War of Independence from England, and then independence itself. We'll look at the period after that, especially the Federalist years when we have a Constitution and George Washington as our first president. Then we move into Unit 3, which is called Nation. And because of time constraints, even though we're only covering approximately half of U.S. history, we will not be able to go much into that. We'll talk briefly about some things in that unit, but that will not be an area over which we will be tested or have much by way of notes. All right, Unit 4 then is missing from my text. So what is Unit 4? Crisis. And that's talking about the crisis between different sections of our country, which is commonly called the Civil War. And we'll spend some time looking at that because that was certainly a crucial point in our country's history. And then we'll have to see how the time is following that, as to whether we get into Reconstruction or anything following that. All right, so that's where we're going this year. So any extra reading you do, or any reading you do for Reading Project, or extra needs to fall within those parameters. And I would really expect that first semester that we limit ourselves to basically the time before the time of exploration, time when Native Americans were on the scene up through the War for Independence. So semester 1 reading should fall within that parameter. And then second semester can start with our nation up through what's called the Civil War. Okay? If you're not sure about a book, make sure you ask me. People sometimes read books that are totally not relevant to what we're studying, and I'm not sure why they do that. But make sure you ask. If you get a book from the library or something, ask. If you get a book from here, there's a procedure to check it out. Most of you know. There should be a card inside the front cover. You simply fill out your name and date and put it back in the, I don't see it, the little green basket back there on the corner desk to put it in. The books that you can read begin in bookcase number 4. So all bookcase number 4, and that primarily does cover first semester, maybe a little bit beyond first semester. And then bookcase number 5 would be okay for second semester. All right, any questions? All right, let's turn a few pages to Unit 1 where you see a time chart. Roman numeral page 14. This time chart helps us to see where we're going in Unit 1. What's the first thing that's on the time chart? Michaela? Right, and how many of you know about Diaz? Nobody's ever heard of him before? Okay, well, wow. We're going to start off with learning some new stuff right away. The only thing is, he's not going to be the first thing we look at because we're going to look at some things that happened before this timeline. I guess something that a lot of people don't know are all the other people that came to America or exploring before Columbus. So we're going to spend some time looking at that, and I hope that you'll find that interesting. And then next you see Columbus. Everybody knows about Columbus, right? Unless you were born on a different planet, you should know about Columbus. And then we have Da Gama. As a point of reference, we have Luther posting his 95 Theses. How many know about Martin Luther? Okay, almost everybody, I think, or maybe even everybody. A late arrival, okay, everybody knows about Luther. Well, what does that have to do with America? That took place in, where? Germany. Does that have anything to do with people coming to America? Yes, it does. And so we're going to be looking a little bit. We're going to at least reference Luther, as he's important. Then we have Magellan. How many know about Magellan? Okay, a few of you. The defeat of the Spanish Armada, the founding of Jamestown. Hopefully you've heard of that. The Pilgrims. How many of you know who the Pilgrims were? A few of you. Most of you, looks like, we're getting kind of reluctant to get your hands up. Then we have the Great Migrations of Puritans. England conquers New Netherland. We have King William's War, the Salem Witch Trials. How many have heard of the Salem Witch Trials? How many are interested in hearing more about the Salem Witch Trials? Okay, it's a good thing because we're going to spend a little time there. Because there's a lot of misinformation about that, as well as a lot of other things that we're going to be looking at. And then with the Great Awakening. How many have ever heard of the Great Awakening? Okay, quite a few of you. That's surprising because sometimes people don't know about that. We're going to spend some time looking at that. And does anybody know anybody associated with the Great Awakening? You know any names? How many ever heard of Jonathan Edwards? Okay, good. A lot of you. We're going to be reading a couple sermons by him. So we're going to get into actually looking at things that people said and wrote at these times and evaluate them as well. All right, so that's where we're going in Unit 1. So let's take a look then at the outline which I'm giving you. I'm going to pass this out and then I'm going to give you an assignment. And I'll write it on the board after I get this passed out to you. And it will also be on RenWeb, which I forgot to do. First week of school. Good. All right, this outline has blanks sometimes, and sometimes it has just space. If there's space, that means you're kind of on your own as to what to write that's important. Now, if you get to a part in the outline which has a bracket, which you'll see right away under A, if it's bracketed, that means it's not in your book. So I'm going to give you this to take notes from your reading. But if it's bracketed, that means it's not there. That means you're going to get that information from me. Okay, so anytime you come to a bracket, hopefully that will be consistent to let you know that that information will be given in class. All right, so take one, pass them around. And as soon as you do that, you may start by reading pages 3 through the middle of page 9. Very short assignment. And fill out the outline on pages 1 and 2, except for the bracketed part. And that's not even due until Friday. Okay, pages 3 through the middle of 9, and fill out the outline as you go. Any questions?
Mr. Henry.
Begin.